So this is, I don't mean to do a pop quiz on you because I hate stuff like that. Hey, where are my glasses? But there are four core sensations and this is part I was going to throw under the bus, but in the MBS approach to adaptive yoga, can anyone share them besides me? Bethany tries to raise her hand. If she didn't know them, that would be a serious problem. Not necessarily fireable, but double secret probationable for sure. Anyone? If there were four, Amanda, you're going under the bus.
Rhythm.
That's one of them. Oh my God, I'm gonna have a heart attack.
My brain's gone.
All right, she's off the hook.
In to go out.
No, that's a principle, for God's sake.
Oh, well, I'm going then. I'm going. I'm muted.
Yeah, anybody?
I'll back Amanda up. I can remember grounding and expansion, but I can't remember the fourth one.
Grounding and expansion and rhythm, that's three. The cut. So do you know when you, as a teacher, sometimes you think maybe you're talking to yourself all the time? Right? And that, especially me, because I go on those weird tangents that I really am talking to myself in a closet. A little bit of that feeling here right now, suddenly. And not just the feeling, this is actually the proof that that might be the case. So grounding, expansion, rhythm, think about what would be essential in any type of movement that wasn't violent. That's too hard to balance, everybody.
I was going to say center. I was trying. It's been a while since I've been on the call.
So, Kate, you get a little bit of a, however, everyone else, if there was a way to give a frowny face, I would give a frowny face. So, oh my God, I've only been doing this for a long time. I'm a little bit in painful shock, but I also kind of want to laugh. Like if I start maniacally laughing through this thing, it's because you pushed me right over the edge, right? I'm tobogganing down the side of sanity, right? But one of the ideas in the method, so this makes this class a little harder that no one really had these on the mind, and I'm smiling, so don't worry about it because the words don't really matter because I actually know you know them. You just don't think of them in terms of words, right? And that's okay, right? But the reason why MBS and I have found that we emphasize sensations in adapting yoga. So have you ever heard me say the line, we don't adapt yoga poses? Or that yoga poses, yoga doesn't discriminate, but yoga poses do. The principles of yoga don't discriminate, but yoga poses do. One of the things that I have found is that regardless of your ability, virtually almost nobody I've ever taught can't feel sensations. So the idea that we're adapting sensations. So although I can't stand up and do triangle pose, there are parts and sensations in triangle pose that I can feel. And what's incredible about the intersection of certain sensations is they can give you they're like to quote David Byrne, a face with a view. You can start to see how the poses themselves happen when if you're thinking about it, if you're not grounded, you're just going to be moving, right? So we're going to do a quick review of the core thing you've been learning for 20, 30 years with me, right? Right? So everyone just throw up, bring or move kind of without thinking, right? With just moving your limb, like I'm basically just generating it from here. compare that with the difference of feeling your sitting bones and your feet and rising your arm. By feeling your sitting bones and feet on the floor, you're actually practicing this, introducing an increased sensation of grounding. So the movement actually feels different. Turns out that grounding will almost always bring you towards the midline, right? And that's part of why. And just so you know, think about the midline, right? That's where a lot of really cool shit happens, right? Like there's, as I wrote in this latest book, there's a party of consciousness at the midline, and bones tend to be there first. That's one of my favorite lines in this version. And bones tend to be there first. So your spine's at the midline, their spines at the midline, or your in your arms, your bones are in at the midline. They're already there. They got there before you, right? Right. So, but the midline, it turns out that the midline, right? Like the place between your sitting bones, and you can't directly feel your spine really until it hurts. So you actually kind of have to do some things to find your midline. And it turns out there are a lot of ways into the midline. So when I ask you to soften the inside of your mouth and the skin on your face, you get your brain gets quieter, right? But in that quiet, and you feel your sitting bones and your feet, and you start to rise up through your spine and broaden across your collarbones, that would be the sensation of expansion, right? The idea of being able to go from the midline out. And then it turns out that there's no such thing as a one-way street in yoga, right? If something's going from the midline out, it can go from the outside in. But going from the outside in isn't as dynamic as going from the midline out, right? It's more mental. So expansion's a really important sensation, right? But in order to balance, think about it. If you're off balance, think about how much weaker you are. Like imagine, standing on one foot, someone can push you over easier, right? If you're way off balance, your physical strength doesn't have leverage, it doesn't have position, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how strong you are if you're off balance. So it turns out but balance is way more than just a physical accomplishment, right? Remember, we taught whole classes on the sensation of balance, right? Balance is an active integration. It turns out when you practice balance, right, and not just as physical accomplishment, right? In order, so like everyone feel your feet on the floor. So here we're going right to grounding, sitting bones, right? Right? Feel the space in between. But now I say things like balance your head over your neck. Feel the space between your ears and your shoulders. Notice it, feel what's inside and connect it to what's outside of you in the empty space. Open to what's behind you, above you, below you, all these cues you've heard for a long time. That actually gets you to practice one of the limbs. Pratyahara. In order to feel balance, you have to withdraw from from the senses that project outward. You have to go inward and start to attain a certain potential within human consciousness, which is it has an interoceptive ability and a proprioceptive ability, right? And if you can balance the two, when you balance what's inside with what's outside, does anyone notice that your spine kind of wants to sit up more straight and tall? Can you tell that expansion starts to happen, that a whole bunch of things start happening? Now, aren't you lucky that you get in this place that's quiet and full, empty and full? There's a thing called rhythm, right? Now, one of your rhythm makers is your breath. I hope you're kind of paying attention to your breath right now, right? In order to pay attention to your breath, you get quiet. And like if you're way off balance, don't do it. But if you twist yourself up way off balance, it's harder to feel your breath. But what's transcendent about balance is even if you're all twisted up in your body, you can still get the sensation of balance, right? It's a transcendent sensation. But rhythm connects through emptiness, links up spaces. And don't forget, your breath has the moving part and the ceasing part, the retentive part and the moving part. So it's all happening. So your breath is like a fractal pattern, right? It actually has all the components in it. That's why so many methods of yoga like really focus on breath. So my thought in trying to adapt for everybody since 1997 and my body since 1991 said if I have those four sensations in some combination, I probably have a pretty good yoga pose, which is very different than just throwing my arm up, right? And mostly I go through life just throwing my arm up. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person that I throw my arm up sometimes. It means I'm losing some of the potential of my nervous system if I don't know that I'm capable of a whole bunch of stuff. This is never a should. This is an opportunity, right? Don't let morality and puritanical thinking invade the full dimension of human experience. It's not better always if it's pure, right? You want all the spaces. All right, so we're a little bit clear on the four sensations, a little clear, right? And they're happening in every yoga pose I've ever taught, not just what I've taught. Um, Sue Frederick is in class, Metallica Girl. Is Metallica Girl really in class? I just got a note from Bethany. She here, Metallica Girl's in class. All right. So I just want to say that's a shout out to someone that she's a woman that came to our adaptive yoga classes and was a huge Metallica fan too. Kind of a little crazy rebel, to be honest with you. However, in her own way. So shout out to her. All right. All right. So back to the four sensations. So if you think about it, everything we do has them in it, right? So when we move around some, which now we're off of these four sensations, now I'm so thrown off my class because I didn't expect to have a little thing, right? That'd be kind of a rhythm part, right? Remember, like rhythm, think about it. We swaddle babies and rock them and they're in rhythm, right? It helps your nervous system. When somebody's really traumatized, they go to rhythm. When someone's really happy, they go to rhythm. It's an human innovation that moves, enters through empty spaces, right? Right. So like if you think about if I do something really like chaotic with some people, when we're spastic, when my legs spasm, I can't help that. But I can also control the way that I toss the rock into the pond. Imagine my movement is like I'm moving through different mediums, right? And I can do it on rhythm in coordination with my breath, let's say, and something really cool's happening, right? So I'm just making this a yoga pose. What I try to get people to get is that you can make a yoga pose out of any movement. So I'm just gonna move my arm this way, and then this, and I'm gonna do it like I just do, like I'm throwing it around, but now I'm gonna ground, and I'm gonna make it beat whatever. I'm gonna not only ground, I'm gonna know when I'm moving my arm, I'm expanding from my midline out, but I'm also gonna try to do it with more balance. So I'm gonna ground, feel my sitting bones. We define balance as equal distribution of presence. So I'm going to try to be in my whole body. I'm going to ground. I know I'm going to expand. So I'm going to move and I'm going to do it more on rhythm. And then I'm going to make sure my breath is being part of it. So instead of, I wouldn't exhale probably and do this. I'd probably inhale and do this, right? And then exhale it back. And then I'm coming forward on my sitting bones a little bit. So I'm making this whole yoga pose. So I'm coming forward a little bit. I'm inhaling, coming back. I'm extending my spine. I'm opening. As I'm opening here, I'm noticing that I can feel my feet and my sitting bones better. Well, like, oh my God, is this all righting itself? Is every space touching every space? What the hell? Yeah, what the hell? You mean that the empty space is already connected and I'm just swimming through the medium, right? And then come on back. We got to do it with the other side. I messed up my shoulder this weekend, so the side's going to be a little more tentative for me, right? I got to be a little more careful, right? Again, I could throw, I'm not going to throw this one quick because this one's too sore, right? But now I'm going to ground. I'm going to know I'm going to move in an expansion. I'm going to try to find my midline, ground it so the movement of my shoulder is not as alone, right? And I'm coming back. So I'm making sure my body's with me. Now I'm going to add my breath, right? Which I can't because I'm talking. I'm exhaling, right? And now I'm going to like let there be rhythm more to the movement. Stay on balance. I'm going to try to be balanced in my whole body. So it's not just my arm that's moving. And I'm moving through the empty space of the room. I'm swimming through a different medium as I move. All these things are happening, right? Good. And then release. So I picked these 4 sensations, right? Because they're cool, but also because they make me practice a subtler relationship to the empty spaces, right? So I don't just get caught up. It turns out when the nervous system, instead of just thinking about winning and moving, when human consciousness is actually to actually move with empty spaces too, your movements will get more graceful, right? When you bring all of you with you, not just your ability to do, but you bring all of the emptiness and the fullness in the movement on rhythm and get bigger in the world, you're actually doing a really good yoga pose, right? So now we'll do, and then we've got these people that have been doing this way longer than you and I have it going like, here's some movements you should pay attention to, right? Put my hands on the table, I'm going to do downward facing dog, right? I'm going to know that if I ground, see, but think about even how, so if you can't place your hands down flat, that's okay. You can put them on your forearms on your on your thighs. Let's just do it first. I'm having like a zillion things come into my mind right now to share with you, right? So I'm actually going to try to ground my arms, work to whatever extent I can, utilizing the midline, but using my muscular action. So if your hands are on the table, pressing down through the thumb side, index finger side of your palms, right? Rotating your upper arm out, lifting, broadening across the collarbones. And as you do that, feeling your sitting bones, broaden across your sacrum to be able to feel the inner groin, go from the inner groin down to the inner knee, down to the inner heel. And as you go down, start to extend your spine more. Look down, breathe. There's ways, good. And then I think weightlifting is really smart, right? But can you get kind of how lacking of intelligence it is a little bit? Like, I mean, when like your body, like you grab the push against the barbell and you just push. And that's part of why it grows muscle. It breaks you down. Like you push against it. There isn't a lot of subtlety to it. You actually have a direct focus and you push against the weight. And you repeat, you break down the muscle, but it heals, right? Hopefully unless you have certain things going on where things don't heal the same, right? But the difference between that and a yoga pose is that you're trying to move and activate and be more aware. So you're moving more of your consciousness than just your will against resistance. Downward facing dog again, but you could also do downward facing dog just sitting in your chair, right? There's all sorts of things, right? You can do it here and lengthen your spine and have your hands out, right? Right, so, and the difference between, yeah, so I'm gonna do some things here. So I'm now doing it with my wrists against my knees, right? I'm working my arms still. I'm making sure the space between my shoulder blades spreads. I'm hitting down. All these things are grounding, right? They are effort, right? And I'm going down from inner groin to inner knee, but I'm lengthening out the top of my head at the same time. I'm working my arms. I'm breathing. And suddenly I have a yoga pose, but now my will tends to disconnect me from the whole room. So I use my breath to keep breathing and make me remember that there's a whole room, even though my will is happening through my body. Good, and then release. Okay, so notice the difference. So let's go back through something really simple, right? So if you can, put your hand down on the table, right? You could put it's a little bit harder with your forearms, but you can do this. You can lean forward onto your with your forearms on your legs, right? Right. But no, what I want you to do is, if you can do this and not be as aware with your side of your forearm too, but close your hand like this, right? Press it, right? And notice what happens when you do dog pose, for example, with your hands like this, or you just press your forearm into your thigh and your knee or whatever, right? And you do it with your muscles like focused through your fingers, but closed, right? So you could call this grounding in a way, because you're taking advantage of the grounding of the force of your hand, and you can feel the muscles firing. Now release. Now compare that with, don't overspread your fingers, but spread your fingers, spread your palms some. Now, what you've done now is activated your skin a little bit more, right? And now when your hands are slightly more spread, notice the difference in the feeling, right? Now to show you again, put your fingers together and notice how your muscles change, right? And then spread and notice the change. One of them is going to convey more subtle sensation, right? One of them is going to be more focused. One of the things I'm trying to show you here is in yoga, when you spread a little bit and go down, you've actually increased your grounding by opening spaces, right? Through your skin. So when your palms are spread, right, different things become possible in movement and sensation through your body. But I want to get across that the grounding has an expansion in it for it to hit on more cylinders, right? And when there's that expansion, so when I close my hand, go back to closing your hand on the table. This is strong and willful. I feel more focused. I feel closed down to the room. I feel like I'm in less balance, right? I'm stronger, but I wouldn't call that balance. So not only do you spread and expand, get the spaces working in your hands, the awareness of the body through the body expands because you've opened space in your base. Your balance is different. Just take those three sensations in and then release. Now try, we're going to go back to the wrong way of doing it, closing your hands again, right? Notice your breath is different. Spread your hands. Notice that your diaphragm gets more awareness, right? So not only is the grounding, so you're now spreading space, grounding, opening your base to more space. It's getting more subtle expansion. This is a more effective time to breathe and find rhythm. I don't know, can you hear me accentuating my breathing? Can you hear that? I don't know if you can hear that, but make sure you're like making time to breathe here. So, and then release. So there's that line from B.K. Iyengar, when my body's in pieces, my mind can be one. Right? When my body's just one, my mind's in pieces. Right? So when I'm using too much will, although I'm more focused, so put your hands back together again and notice that you have to use more will and you can't sense your whole body. So your mind has to work harder to do the poses. Spread, notice the difference. Activate your breath. Let your breath be your rhythm. Let there be space and spreading in your base. Feel the expansion, not just physically through your muscles, but through the overall sensation of your body, which is a form of balance. Breathe in and out. Feel your midline in your body, and then allow the whole room. You're swimming through multiple mediums in a yoga pose, including time. Good, and then release. This continuing review of the four sensations, is it making sense how they all go together? Is it helping? Thumbs up or right? It's never bad to go over what you already know. Trust the repetition. The trick to being a really good yoga student is to have innocence still available to you in the repetition, right? The sensations integrate you with emptiness, which is really important as some of us are experiencing more and more loss, right? All right, so now we're gonna bounce around a little bit to try to open the spaces again. All right, so now we're just using kind of a rhythm thing, and we're letting our spine kind of like reach around into the space instead of everything always being led by your mind. Remember that we let our minds lead us everywhere. It's kind of a bummer. It's kind of like leading, you're not in the space. Your mind's not in the space like your spine, right? It turns out that if you can let there be more space, lifting up and putting yourself a little bit in traction in your base, in your spine, right? You're going to feel lighter, right? When you actually let there be more space, less compression in your spine, things feel better because you have more space in your base. Compression ends up being a dulling sensation, right? And so when I was putting my hands together and squeezing that way, I was compressing more. Take your legs wide. Again, we kind of do this every time. So one of the reasons why every class I want you to take your legs wide is I want you as much as you can. Is I want you to open the base of your spine, right? To get it more open. See, the thing is, when we sit a lot, those of us that have more mobility issues, when we sit a lot, the base of our spine doesn't get to like sing and dance and be in more space. So we have to dance more near the hub of the wheel, right? So now with my legs wide, my groins, which are kind of, one of the things that close down this space, people, when you don't realize it, that a lot of stress is carried in the groins. So when I'm actually like moving around with rhythm, letting the base of my spine, right, just like feel the changes, like opening near the hub of the wheel, because your spine, right, is the thing that's there at you at the midline, and then there's muscles right around there, and there's stability. I mean, your pelvis is creating the stability as the life force comes through your spine. So now we're changing gravity and doing the thing we always do, which is trying to wake up the spine in relationship to the legs. So I'm pushing down as I'm doing the things we always do, push down. I'm forearm here, hand here, and spine extending, but I'm extending the spine this way so I can feel my legs more. I'm not doing it just to go out. And it turns out that I can feel my legs more when I extend beyond the top of my head and go down through my sitting bones. Wait, that doesn't even make sense to my mind. No, it actually doesn't, but it actually works, right? So I'm going this way and I'm just opening. I'm letting there be a greater range of motion in the relationship between the spine and my legs, right? This is like more important than just your hamstring length. Can you keep there being more of a range between your spine and your legs, right? Is there a way to do and live just a little differently in my body without having my body have to be able to do all of the movements, right? Because this actually ends up being some of the window dressing, right? Like, yay! That's like the confetti at the end, right? It was actually way more about my spine. Yay! Confetti goes out, right? I get to, but what mattered was near the hub of the wheel, right? And remember, the thing about a yoga pose is it's trying to teach you or show you how to move through the multiple mediums of our existence, right? That there's a simultaneity of emptiness and fullness, both inside and out of us. Bring your hands together. Elbows, connect to your hands. You can do the same thing because we're going to do a version of headstand, because why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we just like, so I can also do it down on my thighs. Could do it this way. And I can, in a second, interlock the fingers. But here, I wanted you to repeat the 4 sensations, right? So, and you can do it on your thighs too, right here. We've gone through this a ton of times. Here comes the grounding, the connection of the bones. I kind of told you bones kind of matter, right? 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 And so I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to make sure that as I broaden my palms, I expand the center of my chest. As I expand the center of my chest, I open my palms. As I start to feel the length in my spine, I start to want to balance my head over my neck. I start to extend. I'm expanding. I start to realize that as I do this, I can feel my legs more. That's a form of balance, equal distribution of presence. As I get all this to sink as well as it's going to sink, I make sure I pause and go, I'm in the whole room and the life force is coming through my midline. It's a good time to breathe. Everything can become a yoga pose if you have the sensations. Now, because your breath is now I'm going to, in this same position, let's just throw a little spice in there. Do a very slight concave and convexing of your spine through this base. Activate through your spine. Well, that's crazy. And then can you kind of feel there's upward facing dog sitting right there? And then there's almost when you convex, right? Let's just scoot back and just very gently go back over the back of the chair and go, wait, a back bend was sitting right there. Right, just a little bit farther into the confetti. And then come back. And then go back to here. And convex and concave again. Find a rhythm. Now I'm going to add to it. I'm going to convex, concave, and I'm going to broaden across my collarbones. Ooh, ooh, ooh. I'm going to watch what it does to my sitting bones. And then I'm going to breathe into the sensation that makes me feel in my feet. And my goodness, I got a party going on. And hardly anyone can see anything. Good. And then release. So now we're going to go upside down, which in our case means trying to move energy from the head down to the feet, right? So I'm going to now do this, this thing, right? But I'm going to interlock my fingers this time. Now, if I want to make the same similar pranic mistake that what we do when we closed our hands in dog pose, I'm going to squeeze my fingers together and squeeze my hands together really tight, right? But now I've already set the tone so much, I can even feel that in my whole body. Because can anyone feel the pulsing prana through their whole body right now? Like we've done enough where I can feel the, right? So even when I just squeeze here, it pulses because I'm already set. So don't do it wrong. Enough with that doing things wrong stuff, right? So now you're going to interlock, but I want you now to try to reach across this way, like you're trying to take your own pulse and make the webbing of the fingers go together, but not too hard, but hard. And notice what that does. And then don't do it that way. Release and notice how your body like loses its distinction. So even here in this action, so even if you're doing it this way, without being able to interlock your fingers, you try to be more precise and something happens to your whole body, right? So now if you can, put your hands, I'm going to do it on my thighs now, right? By my knees, I'm going to interlock my hands. I'm going to get the grounding. I'm going to do this, right? I'm going to start and doing the stuff with my fingers to get this all engaged with me, right? Turns out I'm going to lengthen my neck in order to hit down through my sitting bones. And I'm going to extend, I'm going to broaden across my sacrum, right? In order to get energy to go down my legs to my heels. On exhale, I'm going to go this way, right? Using the grounding, feeling the expansion of going down through my legs, using the balance, right? So now I'm not going to have you do this, release for a second, but the sensation I just had, which is pretty, I'm now tingling because I did it pretty well, but I don't want you to do this. But if I don't know, I'll turn my head off to the side and try to do the same thing, right? As soon as I did it wrong, like my shoulder hurts, my neck hurts, I've pushed thing, I can't do it with breath, a whole bunch of things go off, right? Because I'm not being as focused. So do it again, have the fingers come together, right? Now there's all this extra stuff I've taught before about your forearms, right? If you can remember any of it, right, do it. Right, which is actually spread, part of it is just spread the forearm, the meat on the by the elbow, spread this, right? And keep the wrists actually going this way, that bone. As I ground down, as I start to lengthen, and then I inhale on exhalation, I extend the energy down to my legs, through my spine down to my legs. I'm really using my breath now, which someone in an inversion, in a physical inversion, does the same thing. They inhale and then they exhale farther into the pose, but upward through their legs. You're exhaling down through your legs. Good, and then release. So one of the things that I think might be happening in headstand, someone that can practice the traditional pose more would know, but I think that one of the reasons why headstand's a meditative pose is that you try to enter a very focused stream. It's much more focused, right? So you're trying to go, and so you're not just holding yourself up upside down, you're in a stream that's moving up through gravity without your effort. You're actually trying to join something, right? But if you're off alignment and you're off and you're not doing the things we know from grounding, expansion, balance, and rhythm, the energy is gonna spill all over. It's now a little bit of shoulder stand, right? So now that I have to be really careful here. I'm gonna reach behind. And so I'm just gonna take some time I guess I'm wearing black, so you can't really see, but as I take my arms behind me, I'm trying to spread across here, right? So I'm just trying to get this part of me more open. So it turns out, and I haven't fully ever, I kind of get this only in hints, right? But I kind of get it, is that I remember way back in 1991, I saw 1991, Gita Iyengar, and I was with her in person. She said, there's fear complex that goes here, right? Which kind of makes sense when you're withdrawing and dropping your shoulders and collapsing here. That's a protective thing that often is a fear response. So there's a lot of ways I kind of get this, but so shoulder stand opens this dynamic part. So put your thumbs underneath your armpits if you can, or just try to raise this up, right? And try to get this more open. You could also do it by being an angry mom with your hands on your hips. And try to put your hands on your hips and raise right here, or Farmer Joe pulling up his suspenders right here. Like so notice the difference when that drops and when it lifts up. This is where you're beginning to enter a different stream in shoulder stand, right? Like this stream, which is the queen of all yoga poses, which is more nourishing, right? There's something really important about this lift. I'm pushing in at my armpits. And then also about sublimating your will by dropping your chin. Right? So in shoulder stand, your back of your neck is lengthening, and the spine and the energy and vitality of the spine is in the lead, and you're sublimating your will. Take a couple breaths like this, which for Iyengar yoga, lifting the sternum and dropping the chin is a bandha. So in Iyengar yoga, shoulder stand is trying to teach you a really core bandha, energetic continuation of the existential energy, right? That's what a bandha is. All right. And then release. So now after I've done all that, I'm gonna take my arms behind me, right? Right. And here, so I did all this extra work because when I took my arms behind me right away, I could tell I was still shut down right here. So all that extra thing we just did was actually to make my shoulder stand better. Right. So now when I do this, woo, I can feel the lift. I can still feel the imprint right here. I can still feel the vitality of that lift. So I'm taking my elbows back behind my chair. I'm lifting and broadening across my collarbones and trying to take that energy and simultaneously hit down through my sitting bones, right? And take a couple of breaths. Now I'm going to release for a second. And if you don't need to release, don't. I just did. So on the next one, I'm going to do all that stuff. And then I'm going to take a breath. And on exhale, I'm going to go down from this base down to my legs. Here we go. Back to Happy Farmer Joe, right? Drop my chin. Take a breath into my spine. Use my exhale to move down through my legs. Good. And then release or stay if you want to a little bit. For me, and one of the reasons my shoulders are so sore is I'm fused right here. So I have a really hard time opening that part of my chest, right? But this lift here and this drop is really, really, really the core. You know, it's a bandha, Jadhara bandha, right? Is one of the cores. So I'm going to suddenly try to practice a version of shoulder stand where I'm not thrown too far into where I'm stuck. And you can do the same one you just did if you wanted, right? But I'm going to do one where I am going to try it this way. I'm going to try to lift my sternum up, really drop my chin, use my forearms on my armrests or on my thighs, drop my chin. Really learn to lift my sternum, drop my shoulder blades, go down through my legs, go inward, keep this sparkling at the center of my chest, and extend down through my feet, and use the rhythm of my exhalation and the expansion of my inhalation to connect the movements with rhythm. Good, and then release. The thing about practicing inversions when you're sitting is I end up feeling like I've been forced into a narrow pipe. So in a second, I'm going to try to counteract that a little bit. But first, I'm just going to lean forward on my forearms, onto my legs. I'm going to interlock my hands or not. I'm going to broaden the space between my shoulder blades. I'm going to lengthen down to my sitting bones out to the top of my head to actually feel my legs. Whoops, I'm in an inversion again. But I'm just going to breathe. But I'm going to do it very grounded and very gentle. Because I really like myself. He says, tongue in cheek and serious. All of the above. And I'm a good yoga student, which I am. So are you. And I have an extraordinarily more to learn. which is also true. And it still means you're a good yoga student, especially if you know it. Good. And then release. How do you thread the needle between false humility and not thinking you know more than you do? Well, I'm going to practice it right here. Sit up straight and tall. I'm going to, if between false humility and knowing you have a lot to learn, maybe I'm going to be able to access the truth better if I'm on better balance, if I'm more grounded, if I take up space rather than withdraw, if I expand, and I allow time and breath to be the rhythm. Of course, I just realized that my head is not balanced over my neck as well as it could be. So I'm gonna adjust whatever you discovered in your sitting posture. Right? Never stop being a yogi. And then I need to be done for a second. Just let it hum. Hey, Bethany, can you teach Shavasana? I have a call I have to take.
Sure. All right. So we'll move into Shavasana. If you have, if it works in your setup, you can go ahead and get a little support on the back of the spine. So settling in. Resting into that support. Soften the jaw. The inside of your mouth. Notice if that allows for any additional release or softening. Shoulder blades drape down the back body. Just the gentlest embrace of the shoulder blades at the space of the back of the heart. Resting into the support beneath you and around you. Noticing your breath. The inhalation and the exhalation. And the rise and the fall. If it serves you, you can place your hands somewhere on your body. Boundary. We'll gently make our way back to center. Blinking the eyes open, slowly letting the light back in. Drawing your hands to prayer, Anjali Mudra. Thank you all for your time and your presence. Namaste.